What's it like to marry a succubus? I've been married to a succubus for 3 years, yet I haven't even held her hand. The day I brought up divorce, she calmly agreed, but suddenly, comments appeared floating above her head. That succubus is such a yandere. The basement's all ready, just waiting for him to sign. The moment he signs those papers, she's going to drain him dry. The captivity play is finally happening. This antagonist deserves it after all the awful things he's done. He's such a fool. If he'd just shown Victoria a little kindness these past years, she would have been wrapped around his finger. My signing hand trembled. I looked at the alluring woman before me and said, about that divorce, maybe we should hold off? Victoria raised an eyebrow slightly, barely lifting her eyelids. Her cold demeanor made me doubt whether I'd actually seen those floating comments at all. Taking a deep breath and putting down the half-signed papers, I scrambled for words. I suddenly don't want a divorce anymore. They say a day as husband and wife means 100 days of grace. We've been together for 3 years now, and we've grown used to each other's presence. I really can't imagine life without you. As I rambled on, the woman's expression grew increasingly puzzled, and I felt more and more awkward, my words becoming increasingly forced. My marriage to Victoria was an accident. 5 years ago, ever since a penniless intern named Ethan joined the company, my smooth sailing life turned into chaos. My childhood sweetheart, who had promised to spend her life with me, fell for him instead and publicly broke off our engagement, humiliating me completely. Even my parents inexplicably took Ethan's side. Furious and determined to prove I didn't need a woman from the Sinclair family to stand on my own, I immediately went to the Laurent family and married Victoria. Their young CEO, who was rumored to be venomous-hearted and cursed to bring death to her husband, a succubus whom everyone avoided. In the 3 years since our marriage, my attempts to oppose Ethan rarely succeeded. Each time, I was either discovered and stopped beforehand, or my plans backfired spectacularly. Recently, when my schemes to harm Ethan were exposed, my reputation was completely ruined. Many good friends cut ties with me. I knew Victoria also despised my underhanded ways and would eventually turn against me like everyone else. I figured I might as well dump her first. It would at least make me look more in control. When I texted her about divorce during a company meeting, she immediately called back. Why? Her urgent voice came through the speaker. I laughed maliciously. The bathroom door wasn't closed properly last time. I accidentally saw your tail. It was slimy. Disgusting. So when I now told her I couldn't live without her, it's no wonder neither Victoria nor I believed it. She asked softly, "Really? You don't want a divorce?" Her clear and cold voice pulled me back from my thoughts. "Not right now," I replied. I watched Victoria's expression carefully, but couldn't detect any joy. She just snorted and said, "Whatever you want." After a few seconds, she took the divorce papers from the table and fed them into the paper shredder. New comments floated above. What's going on with this villain? Did he suddenly grow a brain? Has Sincere finally wised up and decided to win back Victoria? Too late now, though. Her hatred has already taken root. But others argued, who says it's too late? The timing couldn't be better. Didn't you see how happy she looked when she shredded those divorce papers? That paper shredder moment, lol. The little succubus must be terrified he'll change his mind. Someone else chimed in, "Keep it up, don't stop, give it your all. Victoria's a yandere succubus with no moral compass, and you're the evil antagonist. You're perfect for each other. With her by your side, you won't have to worry about fighting Ethan anymore." I spent the entire afternoon piecing things together and finally understood the world I lived in was actually a novel. Ethan was the protagonist, and I was the evil antagonist destined to be tortured to death by the yandere's second female lead. No wonder everyone who got close to Ethan fell under his spell, as if the whole world revolved around him. The information overload was too much. That evening after my shower, I opened my phone hoping to relax my mind, only to find an overwhelming flood of hate comments. All my social media accounts were being attacked, with netizens defending Ethan. Sophie, my ex-fiancée, sent me a WeChat message. "Sincere, don't think I don't know what you're up to. Using such dirty tactics to force me away from Ethan and back to you? All this elaborate scheming just to see me? Fine. You win. Friday afternoon, usual place. I didn't respond. I blocked her and turned off my phone screen. The floating comments surged. Not to whitewash him, but the villain's evil actions aren't completely unreasonable. A privileged young heir, abandoned overnight by his parents, lover, and friends, all of them inexplicably switching sides to help the protagonist against him. I'd go crazy too. He's rich and powerful. Why should he keep losing to a poor good-for-nothing protagonist who can't do anything right but keeps acting high and mighty? This stupid novel has no logic. Another comment read, "If I were the author, I'd slap the male lead once, the female lead twice, and lock the villain and the yandere second female lead together in hatred. They can't leave the basement until they have 8 kids. How's that?" I was speechless. How's what? That's ridiculous. After calming down, I prepared for bed. Just as I was changing into my pajamas, the bedroom door suddenly opened, and Victoria walked in. "Sorry," she said. "You forgot to lock the door." But the next moment, her eyes unconsciously scanned the room, landing somewhere specific. She froze in place, biting her lip. Her eyes became seductive, deep and mesmerizing, reflecting an alluring light. In the dim yellow lighting, her fair skin began to show faintly glowing patterns. Every inch of her skin seemed to speak of desire. Even her body's curves suddenly became more bewitching, and her breath carried an intoxicating sweetness. I was speechless. Yes, succubi involuntarily reveal their true form when aroused. I shuddered, feeling like I was about to be drained dry. Just as I was about to instinctively tell her to leave, the word "get out" on the tip of my tongue, I saw the floating comments. I can already guess the villain's going to tell her to get out with disgust. This is how her love for him gradually eroded. Why is he so dense? What's wrong with having a succubus wife? She loves him so much, how could she actually drain him dry? Sincere, be gentler with your wife. If you keep abusing her now, you'll really face a draining wife in the basement later. Prompted by the comments, I quickly changed my tone and gave Victoria an appeasing smile. "It's fine, honey." Victoria, who had been about to leave, stopped in her tracks. She looked at me, waiting for me to continue. I was speechless. Those damn comments kept calling her wife, and now they'd influenced me too. The comments raged, "Come on, hurry up and say it. One wife and she'll be all yours." The protagonist means nothing compared to this, but others argued, "Can we not make Victoria sound so cheap? After 3 years of cold violence, she must hate him more than she loves him. Besides, don't forget, Victoria ends up imprisoning and torturing the villain to death for the protagonist's sake." The comments split into 2 arguing factions. I raised an eyebrow, wanting to verify the truth of these messages. Following the mood of the moment, I asked, "Victoria, since you've already seen it, tell me, how is it?" She snorted coldly. "Mediocre." Victoria lowered her eyes, making her expression unreadable. The comments debated, "Being this cold is why your husband never loved you. No wonder he still loves the female lead after all these years. Wait, is something different about the villain today? He's not disgusted by Victoria anymore. Are we actually shipping these villains now?" Not giving up, I stepped forward and teased, "How would you know it's mediocre without trying?" Her voice remained cold as she replied, "No need to try." Yet her fingers unconsciously curled, gripping her skirt tightly. I'd never noticed before how cute she looked when shy. I noticed Victoria's collar had become very tight from her revealing her true form. I reached out to help her adjust it, but she bit her lip angrily and said, "Don't touch me." I froze. Remembering the arguing comments from earlier, it made sense. For 3 years, I'd always shown Victoria a cold face, while Ethan had been like a ray of light, comforting and caring for her when she was unhappy. It was normal for Victoria to hate me. I laughed self-mockingly and withdrew my half-extended arm. "Remember to close the door when you leave." "I'm going to sleep." Victoria closed the door but didn't leave. Instead, she walked toward me step by step. Her breathing became increasingly rapid, and her eyes gradually reddened. I finally realized something was wrong. "Victoria, what's wrong? Do you have a fever?" The comments floated. More accurately, she's in heat. Victoria, don't tell me you love him that much. He's just casually flirting with you. And you're already going into heat early? I was speechless. In 3 years of marriage, how had I never known Victoria had heat cycles? The comments explained, this novel's setting is so stupid. The villain actually thought Victoria was cold-hearted. Hello? She's a succubus. Every time this happened before, Victoria would hide away and give herself injections. I was stunned. Watching the scrolling comments, they seemed like a screen full of censored text. Was that why she wouldn't let me touch her earlier? Because of her heat cycle? Victoria nestled restlessly against my neck, nuzzling back and forth. Her pale skin flushed with a rosy tint, tinged with desire, weakening her usual unapproachable aloofness. Before, I'd been so focused on dealing with Ethan and trying to win back Sophie that I'd never properly looked at Victoria. I hadn't realized how beautiful this woman was. Her features were more exquisite than any celebrity's. She bit her lip and said, "There's medicine and syringes in the study desk drawer. Can you get them for me?" Victoria's voice was broken and intermittent as she tried desperately to hide the patterns appearing on her skin. I watched her dreamy, restrained expression, her blood-bitten lips, and her dress clinging to her body with sweat, outlining breathtaking curves. Suddenly, I changed my mind. Though our 3 years of marriage had been passionless, while I might not have a succubus's intense desires, I was still a normal man. Although the first clause of our marriage contract, which I wrote myself, stated, "No emotions, only business," and strictly prohibited taking advantage of vulnerable situations. Well, I was the morally bankrupt villain, wasn't I? What use did I have for keeping promises? Having figured things out, I pinched her cheek and said softly, "Victoria, I'll be gentle." She shook her head. "Don't touch me. I'm dirty." Victoria trembled at my touch, but still desperately maintained her last line of defense. I smiled. "That's not for you to decide." I pulled her into my arms, using my fingertips to wipe the blood from her lips before leaning down to kiss her. The comments buzzed. What's happening? Why's the villain suddenly so dominant? Love mixed with hate is garbage, but love born from hatred is divine. More comments poured in. Heart racing, hand shaking. Are our villain couple finally going to make passionate love? The moment our lips met, Victoria took control. She wrapped her arms around my neck, standing on tiptoes to deeply return the kiss. However, the next moment, a black rope I hadn't noticed had wound around my waist. It was too tight, making me uncomfortable. As I tried to move it aside, Victoria said pitifully, "I'm sorry, don't look." She came to her senses, her pupils contracting sharply as she desperately tried to hide her tail that had emerged from her arousal. Before I could react, she had frantically run out the door. Soon, sounds of drawers being ransacked came from the adjacent bedroom. The air filled with an indescribable medicinal smell. Leaning against the wardrobe, I tried to catch my breath while reading the scrolling comments. "Victoria, get back here. I've already taken off my pants. Why are you running?" Another comment read, "Enough. Am I the only one who feels for Victoria? Because of her succubus identity, she's been bullied and humiliated since childhood. She married her white moonlight with a happy heart, only to have him find her tail disgusting. How could she not be heartbroken? Sincere, you're killing me here. Did you really have to show disgust at her true form at a time like this? She's really about to break." I was speechless. No, this was unfair. I was just uncomfortable with the rope and wanted to loosen it. The next morning, Victoria was nowhere to be found. As I ate my breakfast sandwich, I took 3 deep breaths before opening my phone. Surprisingly, all the hate comments seemed to have vanished overnight. The media outlets that had criticized me most harshly had even been shut down, including their official accounts. The few media friends who still maintained contact with me sent a photo of my parents visiting their company, with the caption, "All sorted out." I smirked. I knew my parents wouldn't really abandon me. After all, they'd always stepped in to resolve all my previous troubles, big and small. However, the comments scoffed. Unbelievable. Every time Victoria quietly helps the villain, she lets those in-laws take the credit. Victoria really is the succubus world's biggest love fool. When her husband's happy, she happily serves him. When he's cold to her, she coldly serves him. Too bad the villain understands nothing. He showed such obvious disgust last night. Though he avoided divorce, he probably can't escape being drained dry in the end. Shocked, I moved my gaze from the comments to my phone screen, studying my parents' photo carefully for 10 minutes. I actually found traces of Photoshop. I opened WeChat and scrolled to the bottom to find Victoria. "Are you free today? I need to talk to you," I wrote. She instantly replied, "You've messaged the wrong person." Annoyed, I gritted my teeth and wrote back, "No, I haven't, wifey." This time her reply was slower. "I'm sorry about last night making you see such a disgusting sight. I'm quite busy today. If you want to discuss divorce, please contact a lawyer first." I hurriedly replied, No, it's not about divorce." Victoria responded, "All right, see you this afternoon." The comments jeered, "Lol, no time for divorce but free to meet if it's not about divorce." Close call. The villain just barely avoided the basement draining play again. Feels like he's realized something and is trying to save himself. Another comment noted, "Why do I feel like something bad is about to happen at this plot point? Can't quite remember what though." That afternoon, I specially brought a bouquet of roses and arrived at the agreed coffee shop half an hour early. I ordered a matcha cake and coffee, casually scrolling through my phone. When I heard someone sit down across from me, I smiled brightly and said, "Honey, try this." But as I looked up, I found Sophie sitting there instead of Victoria. She stared at the roses beside my table and chuckled. "Sincere, you really do love me that much, even calling me honey?" Not bothering to waste words, I stood to leave, but Sophie grabbed my sleeve. I yanked away angrily. "I'm married. Stay away from me." She sneered, "Stop pretending, you death seeker. If it wasn't to make me jealous, how could you possibly marry Victoria, that unwanted freak? Don't think I don't know. In these 3 years, you haven't touched her once." Sophie looked at me teasingly, moistening her lips provocatively. "One kiss, is that enough to make you leave Ethan alone for now?" Looking at the woman before me, I felt only estrangement. When had my sweet, adorable childhood neighbor turned into this? It seemed everyone who came into contact with Ethan eventually became unrecognizable. Sophie leaned in, drawing circles on my chest with her finger. She raised her eyes seductively and said, "Sincere, did you prepare these flowers specially for me?" As I pushed her away, I saw Victoria standing outside through the glass window. The comments jeered, "Don't hold out hope, villain. Victoria's been standing there since you called Sophie honey. With a succubus's heightened senses, she heard everything you said. Drama. Exciting. Amazing. Just when I think Sincere might finally survive, he always finds the 361st way to die." I roughly pushed Sophie away and ran out of the coffee shop, catching Victoria's wrist just before she could leave. Her pupils were black as ink, bottomless. She asked, "Is this what you wanted to tell me about?" "No," I replied. "I don't know why Sophie showed up here." Halfway through speaking, I remembered Sophie's message before I blocked her. Today was Friday, but I had never agreed to meet her. The power of the plot was this strong? Gathering my thoughts, I continued. "Sophie just came to flirt with me uninvited. You saw how I pushed her away immediately." Victoria's features were cold and exquisite. When she wasn't smiling, there wasn't a trace of succubus about her. She frowned slightly, as if judging whether I was telling the truth. Looking directly into her eyes, I said deliberately, "I asked to meet you this afternoon to tell you that last night I kissed you because I wanted to. I touched your tail because the rope was too tight and uncomfortable, not because I was disgusted. Do you understand?" After finishing, I handed her the roses. "These are for you." I waited quietly for her response. Her almost completely black eyes slowly returned to their normal color. The comments celebrated, "Yes, a direct confession, we might have hope." Is the villain being sincere or just trying to make the female lead jealous? Someone argued back, "Is the above comment joking? That green tea party girl doesn't deserve him." The author thinks they created an irresistible female lead, but she's just a fake innocent snake. She deserves that oily protagonist. As long as the villain isn't blind, he'll definitely choose Victoria, though he was kind of blind for the first 3 years. Victoria had just taken the flowers and was about to speak when a female voice interrupted. Sincere. Sophie had also come out of the coffee shop. Seeing Victoria and me standing together, she snorted. "Aren't you being childish? Do you think this will make me jealous?" I slid my hand down Victoria's wrist and interlaced our fingers. "Sophie, how many times do I have to tell you? I'm married. I have a wife, and I'm not interested in you. Can't you understand simple words?" She rolled her eyes, acting completely unworried. "What if I told you Ethan and I broke up? I'm single now." I was about to step forward, but Victoria gripped my hand tightly. Her fingertips trembled slightly. She was anxious. I said impatiently, "Your breakup has nothing to do with me. You being single has zero connection to me. Hitting on me in front of my wife. How shameless can you be? Get out of my way." Scram! Yes, I had feelings for Sophie when we were young, but later, she repeatedly sided with Ethan against me, kicking me when I was down. What little affection I had was long gone, replaced by disgust. Sophie's smile froze on her face. I checked my phone. There were dozens of missed calls. The candlelight dinner I had planned was already half an hour late. Probably ruined now. I sighed. "Victoria, let's go home." She replied, "Okay." The driver was waiting across the street. Even after getting in the car, I never looked back at Sophie once. The comments debated. The villain finally stood up for himself. Now I really believe Sincere doesn't love the female lead anymore. The female lead's character is just disgusting, playing back and forth with the protagonist while unable to let go of the villain's wealth. Trying to have it both ways, our Sincere won't enable that. At home, I sincerely apologized to the restaurant owner and paid double the deposit. Victoria looked around and asked, "Where's the housekeeper?" I awkwardly explained, I'd booked a restaurant for tonight, so I sent her home early, but we missed our reservation time. I grinned, trying to coax her. "It's okay, we can order takeout. What would you like?" Victoria shook her head. "Takeout isn't healthy. What do you want to eat? I can cook," I replied. "All right then. Sweet and sour fish?" Victoria paused. Just as I was about to change my request to something simpler like scrambled eggs with tomatoes, she nodded slowly and said, "Okay, there's fish in the fridge. Wait for me, I'll be quick." I replied, Victoria put on an apron and turned toward the kitchen. With nothing else to do, I wandered to the kitchen door. Through the gap, I saw Victoria bring her right hand, the one I had held, to her face, gently nuzzling it before washing her hands and preparing the ingredients. The comments observed, "Don't fear a yandere's torture, fear a yandere's pure love. Our poor Victoria and Sincere, don't they deserve a happy ending? Author, I'm sending you hate mail. Don't feel like watching the villain couple's forced hatred anymore. Feels like if they could just live happily like this, it would be nice." Someone replied, "No way. The protagonist's halo is too strong. Victoria will inevitably betray Sincere for Ethan. That's how the plot works. It can't be defied." Similar comments had appeared before. My heart sank, and I couldn't browse anymore. Fortunately, Victoria's sweet and sour fish was ready. I eagerly took several big bites, then looked at Victoria, who was quietly looking down. I asked, "That time when I fought with Ethan and fell into the sea, getting a fever of 40 degrees, that sweet and sour fish the housekeeper brought, you actually made it, didn't you?" Victoria quickly shook her head. "No, I didn't." She changed the subject, urging, "Eat quickly. It won't taste good when it's cold." But I continued questioning. "And those hate comments were deleted by you too, weren't they? People say I'm your white moonlight, is that true? When did that happen? Did we know each other before?" She said softly, "Sincere." This was the first time Victoria had called me by name. I pouted. "Fine. If you say it wasn't you, then it wasn't. I'm full. I'll go call Sophie and ask if she got home okay." I left the table, pretending to dial. Suddenly, there was the sound of a knife dropping to the floor. I turned around. Victoria was holding her bleeding fingertip, looking away, her thick eyelashes trembling. She said, "It's nothing. Don't worry about me." I quickly put down the phone, took out bandages and gauze from the first aid kit, and sat back down in front of Victoria. "How can it be nothing when you're bleeding? Does it hurt? Give me your hand." The comments jeered, "Oh, playing the green tea game now, are we? Who could resist those injured puppy eyes? Villain, stop teasing Victoria like this. Or she's not normal, she can't take teasing. Push her too far and you'll get the black room warning." Someone else commented, "Victoria, sister, please start a class, I'll learn on my knees." After tying the bandage, I said, "All done." She replied, "Thank you." Her voice trembled, her breathing becoming increasingly rapid. But this time, Victoria clearly had experience. She said, "I need to go to the bedroom first." "Wait," I stopped her, pulling her back to the sofa. I said, "I heard taking too much of that medicine is bad for your body. You might not be able to become a mother." Victoria explained more quickly than ever. "There are some side effects, but not that one. We can have children. Really, it doesn't affect that." As our skin touched, the patterns on her body emerged again. She reached for her coat to cover up, but I stopped her. I pulled her into my arms, making her straddle my lap. Caressing her faintly visible succubus markings, I said, "They're beautiful." I meant it sincerely. She struggled somewhat resistantly. "Sincere, do you know what you're doing? Let me go." Victoria's face was flushed, her skin burning hot. I replied, "No." I held her tighter, rocking her hips slightly, and smirked. "Honey, we're legally married. I can do anything I want with you." Victoria's tail wrapped around my body, her hot breath tickling my ear. She whispered, "Sincere, don't. I'm dirty. You'll regret this." I replied, "I won't. I told you I initiated this. Come on, I can take it. Drain me dry." The comments teased, "Victoria says don't, but her tale is very honest. Sincere, you're my god. Stubborn lovers need love like a home invasion. As long as you don't do them to death, do them to death." After an intense inner struggle, waves drowned the mast, whirlpools drew in the small boat. Like trying to fill the sea like Jingwei, but the abyss was unfillable. Giving my all was just a drop in the ocean. Round and round, bit by bit, until my vision blurred. As I lay weak and spent, I heard the woman's apologetic voice saying, "Husband, I'm sorry. I'm too hungry. Just a little more." However, a little more turned out to be 7 hours later. I was speechless. The comments complained, "I paid for VIP membership, what can't I see?" Damn, the protagonist couple's toxic drama leaves me cold, even makes me want to laugh. But these villain lovers sharing a little kiss makes me cry with sweetness. Who understands? This hits different. More comments analyzed. Victoria's bone-deep inferiority complex makes her feel she's defiling her white moonlight. Her guilt is maxed out, but her physical instincts won't let her stop herself. She can only sink while fully conscious. And this situation continued for a whole week. By the last few days, I really couldn't take it anymore. I said, "Maybe. You should use some medicine after all." Victoria's clingy gaze seemed to want to bore holes in me. Her cold voice somehow carried a hint of grievance. She pitifully said, "Sincere, you still can't accept it, can you?" "Of course not." I rubbed my waist, looking at Victoria's devastatingly beautiful face, remembering my previous cruel words to her. My anger instantly disappeared. Well, people always have to pay for their youthful mistakes. Resigned, I picked up my bathrobe and said, "I'm going to shower first." Victoria clung to me and said, "Okay, let's go together." I was speechless. These days of imprisonment in all but name finally reached a turning point on the first day of snow. Victoria had to attend a business banquet in City C. I had also received an invitation. Usually I disdained these occasions of drinking, singing praises, and putting on airs. But seeing those business circles privately ostracizing me, hoping I wouldn't show up, made me want to go even more. If they couldn't stand seeing me, then they'd have to look. After I changed into the custom suit Victoria had specially ordered for me, the long-absent comments appeared again. "Villain, be careful. The protagonist will be at this banquet too." According to the plot, this should be when the protagonist and Victoria's relationship grows closer. Some criticized me. I really don't understand why Sincere's fans are growing. Even wanting to save him, those evil things he did weren't fake. How are they all whitewashing him now? Others argued, because we're all working-class people. We can't relate to this plot where everyone loves a useless protagonist and ignores the supporting characters' deaths. Besides, that protagonist isn't any better. Victoria came over and said softly, "If you don't want to go, I won't go either." Victoria nestled in my arms in her evening gown. In the mirror, we made a striking couple, devastatingly handsome and beautiful together. I shook my head. "It's fine. I have thick skin. Let's go." And that was how our story truly began.